Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Tom's Gadget Garage. Today we're going to be doing a range test with the Ninebot Max G3 with the external battery as well as the larger internal GT3 battery. So internal battery is 899 watt hours of capacity, external battery is 468 watt hours of capacity. So we should be looking at some pretty incredible range today, and I'll be completely honest with you, I have been kind of terrified of this range test because the amount of time it's potentially going to take to complete. But anyways, I am cruising around in sport mode today. I do have the top speed capped at 20 miles an hour, acceleration strength set to standard, and I've also got regenerative brake set to weak. Now, if you followed my channel for a while, you'll know I've done pretty extensive range tests with this scooter, both in its stock, smaller battery configuration, with the larger GT3 battery, as well as with the external battery. Now we're combining the external and the large internal battery to see what we can squeeze out of this thing today. Now for today's ride, I do weigh in at 200 pounds, and I've got about 6 pounds or so of gear with me. So total weight, 206 pounds. So an important thing to mention here is that I've had this larger GT3 internal battery both in the ZT3 Pro and this Ninebot Max G3, and I've tested both out extensively. But at this point, I cannot say that I recommend making that upgrade, primarily because I have no clue how it impacts the actual warranty of the scooter, as well as firmware updates. Now, full transparency, firmware updates have gone through just fine so far, but I can't say it's going to continue to be like that in the future. In fact, as of the filming of this video, I don't even see that 46.8 volt GT3 battery on Segway's website anymore. But anyways, I did remove this from the ZT3 Pro last night and put it in here, and I'm going to tell you right now, I had a heck of a time getting this thing to charge up, and I'll go into that in just a moment as soon as I cross over this intersection. So as I was mentioning, you know, I pulled the internal battery out of the ZT3 Pro. When I did that, it had about 70% battery remaining in it. And then I put it in the Ninebot Max G3. Now the external battery, which was already attached to the Ninebot Max G3, was sitting at 72% charge. And so once I got everything installed, I went ahead and plugged the charger into the G3 so it can charge up both the external and the larger internal battery. And what it ended up doing was fully charging the internal battery, but it didn't charge the external battery at all. And the interesting thing is that the app 100% recognized the external battery because it was showing up as battery 1, battery 2, but it wasn't charging it, and that's after like 5-6 hours. There was no current or anything moving in or out of that external battery, so I was like, okay, that's weird. So then I took the Ninebot Max G3 out for a little bit of a ride, and I cruised around the neighborhood, got the voltage down to 83%, and still the external battery wasn't even charging the internal battery. And so something seemed to be off, but once again, the app fully recognized it. So a quick little intermission here. I did leave out a key piece of information, and that is after I ran that battery down to 83%, I brought it back into my garage, I plugged it in to charge it, and this time around, instead of charging the scooter, it actually charged the external battery to 100%. So as you can imagine, at that point, I was pretty much ready to give up on this range test altogether. I can't be sitting around for hours farting around with these batteries. And so I leave the scooter alone. I'm like, all right, it's not charging. I go inside, get ready to watch a movie on Netflix. And then, about 20-30 minutes later, I check in, and lo and behold, the external battery is charging up the main battery. And so that charges, and it goes all the way up until about 90%, and then it stops. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, they're both at 90%. That's awesome. So I went ahead and plugged the charger in, and it started charging the main battery. And then it charged up the second battery, both to 100%. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it started working. And so here I am now starting my range test, almost 4 hours later than I expected. But I'm happy to say everything is charged up. So, after going through that whole charging debacle, I'm a little curious how this range test is going to go. And I'm hoping that this external battery does, in fact, charge up the main battery. So I'll be doing periodic check-ins, and we'll take a look at what both the internal and external battery are doing. I just want to make sure the external is actually charging up the internal, because if all goes well, I mean, we're looking at a potentially upwards of 50-mile ride today. So we'll see how it all works out. But as I was mentioning earlier, I've got an entire video library on this scooter, so If you want to see how this did with the stock battery, I've got a video on that. If you want to see how it did with the larger GT3 battery, I've got a video on that. If you want to see how it did with the stock battery with the external battery, I've got a video on that. And hopefully by the end of today, we'll have another video of this scooter with both the larger internal battery and the external battery. So fingers crossed all goes well. But just in case I haven't made it clear already, the internal battery comes from the 46.8 volt GT3 battery, not the GT3 Pro. GT3 Pro uses a 72 volt system. Plugging that into this scooter would be nothing short of an absolute disaster. But going back to the ride here, I am going to be using the same trail that I use for all of my range tests, whether it be scooters or e-bikes. And I'm also using Garmin GPS to track our ride today. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of puddles out here. Last week we had like 7 days straight of just like intense rain. In fact, I think it's the wettest fall we've ever had in the Phoenix area, so that was pretty crazy. But if you do find yourself riding around in inclement condition, this scooter does have an IPX6 water resistance rating, which means it can withstand high pressure water jets, so you should be good to go if it all of a sudden starts raining on you. And if you are curious, the external battery has an IPX7 water resistance rating, which is even better, you know, and so that brings me a lot of peace of mind, because that was one of my big concerns going into this. And you know, installing this external battery is very straightforward, and you know, the plugs themselves seem to be air and water tight. You know, there's a distinct suction sound when you plug them in and unplug them. So anyways, internal battery weighs about 2 pounds more than the stock battery. External battery, something like 8 pounds or so. So you're looking about an additional 10 pounds of weight between these two batteries. And that's really the cost of getting what's potentially going to be some pretty incredible range. Now, in order to keep this video nice and short and not multiple hours long, I will be checking in with you periodically, and at those check-ins we'll see how both batteries are doing, as well as what our current mileage is. One of the questions that I've gotten on a lot of my other videos is whether or not the on-screen display shows an accurate representation of how much range you have, accounting for both the external battery and the internal battery. And the short answer is it doesn't. It does not show you an adjusted range. So in sport mode, it shows you the same 25 miles of estimated range. So if you are installing the external battery or this larger internal battery and you don't see that adjust, it's completely normal. Hopefully in the future, Segway you know, pushes out a firmware update that gives you a more accurate representation of how much range you can actually get. And with all my range tests, I usually mark the turnaround point right around 60 to 65% battery remaining. The reason why I do that is that the first half of the battery is always more performant than the second half of the battery. And so the reason for that being is you wear the battery down, voltage goes down, output, top speed, acceleration, it all goes down. So with that being said, if I were to mark my turnaround point at 50% battery remaining, all else being equal, chances are I wouldn't make it back to my starting point. All right, so right now I am showing 88% battery remaining in the app. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull over to the side here and see if we got any action from that external battery. So taking a look at the battery details, battery 1 is at 88%, current 5.4 amps, so it is definitely charging. Battery 2 is showing about 94%, current minus 5.8 amps. So all is charging, all is functioning as I would expect, so that is definitely good news. All right, folks, so that brings me a lot of peace of mind, because I'll tell you what, after that charging debacle last night, I wasn't sure what to expect on this ride, but it is working, so it looks like we're gonna be in for a long ride today. All right, folks, so up ahead, we're gonna have a little bit of a hill climb, 8.5% grade up our pedestrian bridge. I've covered hill climbability on this scooter extensively in the past, so it's not going to be an issue. All right, here's our pedestrian bridge hill climb, still in sport mode, speed cap to 20, throttle all the way in, and we are accelerating up this incline right now. Absolutely fantastic. And on the way down, we got that weak regen in action right now, so I don't have my hands on the brakes. It's the scooter allowing us to maintain our speed while also trickle charging our battery. Looks like 515 watts of power going back into that battery right now. Definitely reduces wear and tear on the disc brakes and pads that this scooter comes equipped with. Quick little mileage update. We're officially at 6 miles into this ride. We've been riding around for right around 29 minutes at this point. Battery in app says 87% battery remaining. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause filming here, and I'll check in with you a little bit later on the ride. Now, if you're curious how much all these upgrades cost, it adds up. So the Ninebot Max G3 is normally somewhere around 1,200 bucks. This internal battery after tax and all that fun stuff is priced right around $300. So now you're looking at 1,500 bucks. And then you got $300 for this external battery. So $1,800 for this single motor commuter scooter. It's expensive. For that price, there's a lot of other scooters that you can have. But if you've already got a Ninebot Max G3 and you know, you love the scooter, you love everything about it, but you just want more range, you know, getting an external battery could be a good option. And if you know, you like, you know, playing around with not having a warranty and stuff, maybe this internal battery could be a good option too. But anyways, I'm excited to test all this out. Not as excited to be doing this range test today, because I know we're going to be going a long distance. So some of the mileage benchmarks that we're going to be looking at today are going to be, number one, the stock battery. On that, I was able to get 22.5 miles. Next up is going to be the larger internal battery. On that, I was able to get 34.1 miles. And then finally, with the stock battery setup, with the addition of the external battery, I was able to get just over 40 miles of range. So in my estimation, we should be able to get somewhere around 50 miles of range today. I don't know, we'll have to see. 50 to 52. And if that's the case, is it worth all the upgrade costs? I don't know. Guess that depends on each person's needs. All right, folks, quick mileage update. We officially crossed the 13-mile mark. We've been riding around for approximately 53 minutes, and on the display, I'm showing 82% battery remaining. So I'm gonna go ahead and do is pull over to the side here. We'll see how we're doing with both of those batteries in the app. All right, so taking a look at the battery details, battery 1 is at 82%, 6.7 amps of current going into it. Battery 2, we'll give it a second to load here, 67%, and it is discharging at 7.8 amps. So definitely charging up that primary battery. So far, so good. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and continue on our range test here, and I will check in with you once we rack up more miles. All right, we're gonna go ahead and pull into this park area, loop around here. There'll be a little cobblestone bridge we'll be able to test out the suspension on and see how that external battery holds on for dear life. That's one concern I had with this external battery, is how well connected to the scooter it would be, and turns out very well. All right, here's our cobblestone bridge. Very bumpy ride. Which is to be expected when going over any kind of cobblestone, but you definitely heard that suspension going to work. But the external battery is still attached, and that's the important thing here. And we'll cruise around on the surface streets a bit. We've got some nice gigantic bike lanes in this area, which I'm always excited to ride around on. I wish they were like that everywhere. Here's these jumbo bike lanes I was talking about. Almost fit a car in this thing. You know, Tempe, Arizona, which is where we're at right now, not too far away from Tempe Town Lake. You know, they've got a lot of great like pedestrian and bicyclist infrastructure. You know, that's not something that you see in all places here in Arizona. Obviously, I'm doing this range test on these glorious canal paths. I'm very grateful for that. Those go for literally hundreds of miles. But within the cities, you know, even in the suburbs, you know, it's not very bike friendly. You know, a lot of the roads here are like 45 miles an hour and people drive 60 on them. And so, you know, whether or not you drive on there depends on how much you value life. It's one thing I love about wide open roads like this, is you get a lot of freedom. Especially since there's no cars. That's one thing I will say about this Ninebot Max G3, is it's got very good handling. It's a very stable riding platform. Also, has very smooth operation to it. Good throttle response, nice plush suspension. A little bit different than the suspension we see on the GT3 Pro. That does ride a little more firm, which is going to be, you know, good for off-road stuff, at least in my experience so far. But for stuff like this kind of nice plush suspension is absolutely perfect. little bit of a steep hill here. And this Ninebot Max G3 just powers through it all. All right, folks, we have officially crossed the 20-mile mark. We've been riding for an hour and 21 minutes at this point. I'm gonna go ahead and pull over to the side here, see how that battery's doing. All right, so battery 1's at 75%. It's taking in 6.7 amps of current. Battery 2, we'll wait for it to update here. It's currently at 42%. 8.2 amps of current leaving that battery going into the external battery. We'll go ahead and keep riding around here, and we'll get turned around here in a moment. All right, so I went ahead and got us turned around, and we did that right around the 20.5 mile mark. And according to the app, we got 75% battery remaining, at least in the primary battery on board, that GT3 battery. Go ahead and ride alongside this golf course here, since we have the luxury of range and time today. So something that's been on my mind with this external battery is the fact that when I got it brand new out of the box, it said that it had one deep discharge in app, which was interesting because it's a brand new battery. And I know that other folks have run into that as well, but what's even more interesting is the fact that after I did my first range test with the stock battery as well as the external battery, it said that it once again did a deep discharge. And what's interesting about that test is that, you know, at a certain point, the external battery just dropped off. It wasn't even visible in the app, but I still had plenty of juice left in the tank. We got to watch out for this bird here. Still had plenty of juice left in the tank. And so, I don't know, you know, is this battery deep discharging? And normally you don't want to deep discharge anything because it's not great for the longevity of the battery. But apparently, through normal use of this external battery, it's counting those as deep discharges. All right, folks, so we officially crossed the 30-mile mark. We've been riding around for an hour and 59 minutes, so 2 hours at this point. And according to the display, we got 63% battery remaining. Let's go ahead and check on those two batteries. So looking at the display, battery 1 is at 63%, current minus 0.1 amp, so it's definitely not charging anymore. Battery 2, let's take a look, 0%. Voltage is currently sitting at 40.2 volts. Temperature is 33 degrees Celsius. All right, folks, so there you go. External battery is officially fully depleted. Right now we're running on this larger GT3 battery, and voltage on here is right at around 49-50 volts. So we should have plenty of juice to make it back, but I certainly hope I calculated all this correctly. All right, looks like we got somebody on an EUC up ahead. All right, so I went ahead and pulled over so I can take a quick peek at the battery details here. And that second battery, the external battery, battery number 2, officially dropped off. We can't even look at its details in the app right now because it's no longer available. It's fully depleted. I'm gonna go ahead and transition onto these surface streets for a little bit, and then I'm gonna go ahead and check in with you a little bit later on down the line. A little comfort check-in. You know, we're at right around the 36-mile mark, and my feet are definitely getting sore. My hands are a little bit sore as well. The grips on this scooter are very round. You know, they're not ergonomic grips by any stretch of the imagination. Shorter rides, you know, completely comfortable. I don't have any issue, but on these longer rides, I'd prefer a different handlebar style. Anyways, we've got about 35% battery remaining at this point, and we're still able to maintain 19-20 miles an hour. So I'd say we're doing very good. Once we get lower though, it will take significantly longer to get up to speed. And that is one thing I'm noticing right now, is that when I do pick up speed from a stop, it's taking a little bit longer than it did when we had a full battery. But of course that's to be expected. And look at that, GPS just yelled at me. We officially crossed the 40-mile mark, which means we are now above and beyond the 40 miles that we got with the extended battery as well as stock battery setup. So right now, every mile that we get is the result of having a large internal battery as well as this external battery. It's a little police situation up here. They're definitely cracking down on all the e-moto riders out here. We've had a lot of police patrolling the area and going after people doing crazy things on their e-bikes and stuff. They've even been chasing people with drones, you know, so definitely not playing around. All right, folks, quick mileage update. We officially crossed the 45-mile mark. We've been riding just over 3 hours, and according to the app, we got 17% battery remaining. So now that we're below 20%, we got that seg range, formerly known as righty-long technology, taking full effect. It's actually reduced our top speed, so throttle's all the way in. We're cruising around at a cool 18 miles an hour. Can't go any faster. These Segway scooters definitely prioritize range over maintaining speed throughout the entirety of the battery range. So if you're, you know, looking to stretch out your mileage, Segways definitely will help you do that. But anyways, we got 5 miles, a little less than 5 miles to the 50-mile mark. Are we gonna make it? That's the question. So right now we're at 11% battery remaining, and the scooter is restricting our speed to about 15, 16 miles an hour. From a comfort perspective, definitely have some sore hands here. My feet hurt, my lower back hurts. I mean, this really is a long ride. And we are officially back in the vicinity of our starting point. Now we're at under 10%. Throttle is capping us here at 14 miles an hour. So we are basically entering crawl to home mode. Things are gonna just continue to slow down until this thing stops. In terms of estimated range remaining, it says 6 miles. Can we go 6 miles with 9%? I don't know. Definitely don't want to do 6 miles at this speed, that's for sure. All right, folks, so as you can see, this seg range slash righty-long stuff really does draw out the bottom end of the battery. Right now, we've got 6% in the tank, and we are capped at 11 miles an hour. So we aren't going anywhere too quickly at this point. That there is our under 5% battery remaining alarm. So right now it's basically a crawl home. Unfortunately for me, this scooter is still moving. All right, folks, so there you have it. That was our range test with the Segway Ninebot Max G3 with the external battery as well as the larger 46.8 volt GT3 battery. And on today's ride, we went 51.24 miles. We had an average moving speed of 15.8 miles an hour. We had a top speed of 20.3 miles an hour. Elevation gain 764 feet. And we were riding around for 3 hours, 38 minutes. So as you can see, we had one heck of a ride today. 51 miles plus on a Ninebot Max G3 absolutely blows my mind. Hopefully, for my sake, they don't come out with any more external batteries that I can attach to this, because 51 miles is a lot. But overall, it was a fantastic ride. I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I got this out of the way. But if you do want to pick up one of these Ninebot Max G3s, I will include an affiliate link in the description below. Same thing with the external battery. And if you use that to make your purchase, it absolutely helps support this channel and keeps the wheels moving on future reviews. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns in the comment section below. And as always, thank you so much for tuning into Tom's Gadget Garage. We'll see you next time.